This month on American Heat, 87 people died during a social club arson fire in New York City. We'll have a first report. Then to Philadelphia. We'll learn what it took to handle that big subway wreck and scores of victims.
I'm Stephen Ray Almere in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where life near the ocean has been good for firefighters. But there are some dark clouds in this bright sky. Recently, many firefighters here have died of cancer or have contracted cancer. The search for answers is coming up on American Heat.
This is Bruce Marshall for American Heat. Coming up, I have the story of how firefighters in Natticoke, Ontario extinguished 13.5 acres of burning tires in 17 days.
Part 2 of water safety. College questions from the University of Cincinnati. Lessons learned by the people involved are coming up right now on American Heat.
The fire was extinguished in about 4 minutes, but still the death toll was staggering. Hello and welcome to American Heat. I'm Stephen Ray Almere.
And I'm Don Marsh. It happened at the Happy Land Social Club. 87 people who came to laugh and dance would die, the work of an arsonist.
At this taping, fire officials are still sorting through this tragedy, but here's what we have to present in our American Heat first report. While the fire was quickly extinguished, what New York firefighters and EMS providers faced then was monstrous. The slow removal of bodies of people dressed in their dancing clothes, many of them young people. When it was over, there would be 87 dead. Many died of smoke inhalation. Some were burned. Some were trampled as patrons of this illegal social club tried desperately to escape through its only exit. If you protect a city, you may have some similar illegal clubs to worry about. Happy Land was located in an impoverished neighborhood near the Bronx Zoo. Most of the victims were Honduran or Dominican immigrants. These clubs pop up without licenses. Few, if any, meet fire codes, but they are cheaper for patrons. Happy Land was ordered shut down by the city 4 months before this tragedy. There are an estimated 700 such clubs in New York City. The dance floor was located on the second floor with narrow hallways and stairways leading downstairs to a single entrance and exit. 69 bodies were found on the second floor, 18 on the first floor. Here is an early interview with First Assistant Fire Commissioner Robert Unger, obviously being very careful with the type of information he is relaying to the public.
Yes, some of the firefighters who arrived here, the first two companies, were somewhat traumatized by what they found when they arrived, and the fire department has offered them assistance if they feel that they need it.
Can you describe again the scene on the second floor?
I'm not going to go into the details of the scene on the second floor other than to say that it was terrible. And anybody who can imagine what it was like up there will never, ever frequent an illegal social club.
This man, Julio Gonzalez, confessed to setting the fire near the only entrance and exit of the building. Police say he argued with a girlfriend who sold tickets here. Then he returned with a can of gasoline about 3 a.m. and started the fire. He is charged with arson and murder. The woman he had argued with was one of only 4 survivors. Following this tragedy, New York launched an immediate crackdown on other illegal social clubs. Fire departments around the country followed suit. This fire took place on the very day of the 79th anniversary of the Triangle Shirtwaist Company fire in Manhattan. That killed 145 immigrant garment workers. We, of course, will be following up as information becomes available from investigators and New York fire officials.
If you live in a city with a mass transit system, there is no doubt that one day you may be faced with a multi-casualty incident of large proportions. The city of Philadelphia suffered one such incident recently. It was the city's worst subway accident in history. Philadelphia, the the birthplace of our nation's Constitution. This historic city has grown to become one of our country's most prosperous industrial locations. And like many large cities, mass transit is vital to its daily survival. But on March 7th, 1990, this historic city experienced an historic event that crippled a portion of that mass transit system and sent a well-orchestrated disaster plan into motion. What stretched out beneath this scene was the Market-Frankford line of Philadelphia's elevated transit system, also known as the L Line. The system is run by the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority, or SEPTA. This east-west route carries thousands of commuters daily. The ill-fated train had just left the 30th Street station heading west. Then about a half a block out of the station, a traction motor comes loose on the front of car 4, hits a railroad switch, and sends the rear wheels of the car to an adjacent set of tracks. Suddenly, car 4 collides with a set of I-beam support pillars that nearly ripped the car in two. The call for help was placed by SEPTA directly to the Fire Communications Center, who then toned out the call.
It was a very frustrating scene inside I believe it was car number 3. It was very frustrating because all these people were tangled up, and they weren't tangled up with belts, seat belts like you're usually used to, or car seats which you can just push out of the way within 15 minutes you're able to get there. I mean, they were tangled in solid steel. You had, therefore, a lot of people trying to get them out, and you probably had 15 to 20 people in one subway car that was reduced to half the size of a normal subway car due to the crash itself.
Air, switch, backward, side, everything, lower level. 22. Okay. I got 4 spines right here.
The very first step that I took was to designate a staging area in this area here. And that was manned by the captain of the 4th In Engine Company, Captain Michael McCool of Engine 24. In addition to that, because I knew that we had a number of casualties, and at this time there was no clear number established, we also named 2 senior paramedics, Fire Paramedic Dan Gilbert and Fire Paramedic George Butts, as the casualty transportation officers to assist Captain McCool.
That's 5 nursing teams, 5 paramedic duty, but I just let Deputy 1 know that.
There were walking wounded. There were those who needed immediate transport. They were removed in quick and orderly fashion.
People were moved out right away. We had plenty of ambulances and plenty of personnel to carry, because it was a long carry up.
What's the triage? Take it east to 30th Street.
The victims are either transported to area hospitals or bused to their desired location. But the most seriously injured still lie in the wreckage.
Most of the injuries all these patients had were crushing type injuries, mostly fractures to the lower extremities for the living patients. The DOAs received major thoracic type injuries.
There were 7 trapped in the shredded steel. Victim 1, male, legs pinned. Victim 2, male, legs pinned beneath victim 1. Victim 3, male, legs pinned. Victim 4, female, DOA. Victim 5, male, DOA. Victim 6, elderly female, legs and arms pinned. Victim 7, male, legs pinned. Because of litigation, there is no videotape or photos available of the inside of the car.
The first thing I did was try to establish how many patients we had to deal with in the wreckage, how many we had to deal with, how many that could be evacuated from the scene immediately, and how many would require additional help and manpower.
At the onset of the incident, before support arrived, conditions in the tunnel were quite uncomfortable.
It was very dark, and amid the cries of the injured, we would find one here, one there, with some light from the personnel that worked for SEPTA, because we couldn't see everyone who was crying out to us because it was so dark in there. So we would be led to them by their cries and whatnot, and when we found them, most of them were pent in the wreckage pretty good, and we couldn't get them out as quickly as we would have liked to.
Portable lights and generators were brought in. The generators were also used to power the heavy rescue tools needed.
We used a Partner K1200 saw. It has like a 14-inch blade. Now, we were using that saw as a precision instrument. And, you know, like standing here, that sounds like fairly easy, but down on the scene, it was everything, because we had fellas outside the car cutting the body of the car. And then inside, we were trying to coordinate, and we couldn't actually see his foot. So what we were trying to do was pick a point high so we wouldn't, you know, further, you know, aggravate his injuries.
We fought for every inch that we had to get with that mass of metal. Cut everything that had to be cut and could be cut. We cut a door away, we cut the skin of the wall away. It wasn't just inside, it was a coordinated effort. There was a working team. Once the flow of the extrication became involved, there was another extrication crew who was working on the outside of the car, cutting the skin of the car away to expose the trapped extremities of the victims.
As rescuers needed tools or supplies, there was immediate action taken.
You're several 100 feet inside of an underground train tunnel. You're about 3 floors below ground level. You had to come through a series of steps and so forth. We never ran out of appropriate EMS people, appropriate EMS supplies, jaws of life, forcible entry tools, or personnel.
Because we were operating 3 levels below ground, we estimated that for every person that came out, we used 15 to 18 people to get them to one of these rescue squads in this point. So you very quickly use up that tremendous pool of manpower.
ES2 to ladder 5.
One thing firefighters had to deal with was poor communications at the scene. Officers identified the problem and solved it.
We were able to communicate horizontally, and we set up some liaisons, if you will, to take care of that communication. As the incident commander, I was not able to communicate directly, vertically, to the people upstairs.
What I did then was assign Captain David Holcomb of Engine Company 47 to act in relay at the platform as a communications relay. We would later fill in that chain with 3 other officers to complete it.
What we had to do in this case, since the incident occurred 3 levels below the street, we had to string a hardwire sound-powered phone system, for lack of a better term, down into the area so that the tactical command post in the track area could actually then speak directly to the communications vehicle without going through a radio system. They went through a hardwire system. And that, again, served us very well in this situation.
On ground level, the sector officer deals with a mass of people, traffic, and media. Because all EMS hands are needed, duties change.
I then proceeded up to the staging area just to make sure that Captain McCool was not overwhelmed. And what I found was the fact that the 2 paramedics that were assigned as casualty transportation officers had very quickly been called by ES4, who was the triage officer who was working down in the car, and that was Fire Paramedic Captain Daniel DeStefano. He had called them down because he had a severe need for paramedics. So Captain McCool had become both the staging area commander and the casualty transportation officer.
As hours go by, firefighters, EMTs, paramedics, and doctors deal with the changing condition and temperament of the victims.
It just seemed like if you breathed on him, that, you know, like he was like screaming in pain. It was really, that part of it was unbelievable just to have like another human being right below you, you know, like just like constantly, like intermittently screaming, you know, like in pain.
Rescuers had tremendous manpower and equipment support. EMS also had support.
We were able to put equipment to the scene. We were able to get all the levels, whether it was first responder, whether it was firefighting forces, medical teams. We were able to place this unit that we're in right now, our mass casualties unit, to the scene. Backboards and collars, for example, they're the kinds of things that you need in a subway accident. There can almost never be too many of those. we were able to say confidently that because of the fact that we have, for example, a backboard on every first responder pumper, we carry 20 of them on this unit, we have 50 cervical collars on this unit, we were able to put a person that had to be transported in immobilization, 100%, everybody, within a very, very rapid space of time.
In Philadelphia, EMS is integrated into the fire service. The process is taken a step further by intimately including the medical community in on planning and operation.
I think too often fire chiefs and physicians get into these headbutting contests, failing to recognize that their interests are similar, and that the way they're going to get broader recognition for that, it tends to come from different constituencies. And so that if they'll work together and cooperate together, they will synergistically make for a better program, and then each can go back to their own constituency, the fire chief to fire people, and the physician to medical people, and say, look what I've participated in, look what I've done.
Inside the L car, two crews worked simultaneously, one on the left, the other on the right. Victim 1 on the left side was the first to be removed.
But like I said, the metal was still all twisted up, so we had to do some cutting and some chopping. We used the Sawzall because the jaws wasn't cutting through the bars at the time because we didn't have enough leverage to actually get up in there. And once we got that out, then we started to work on victim 2. You know, he was in a lot of pain, but we gave him quite a few doses of morphine for the pain, and then we cut another hole in there, and then we used the jaws of life to actually lift up the metal itself. And in the process of doing that, while we were trying to take the pressure off of him a little bit and lifting up the metal, then we realized that we could get victim number 1 out, who was laying on the ground. So we stopped what we had right there and said, wait a minute, now this guy, you know, the metal's come apart enough to get him out, so let's take him. So I went down and I cut his sneak off, and then we took him out, and then we had more room from where he was laying at to work on the other victim, victim number 2.
On the right side, victim 3 was in pretty good shape, except for being pinned. Crews worked feverishly to free victim 7 so they could work on the elderly female in front of him.
She was caught between a seat behind her and a seat in front of her. Her right leg was pinned between the side of the car and the seats, and both of her arms were over top of the seat in front of her and were pinned by one of the fatalities. So the only thing that was free on her was her head and neck and her left leg. When we initially entered the car, she was awake and alert, complaining of a lot of pain with a normal heart rate and a normal respiratory rate. As the extrication proceeded, they cut away the seat behind her, tried to move some of the metal. We were able to free her arms. She had a progressively decreasing mental status, and it became apparent that she was slipping into shock.
The lady was finally extricated and transported. She would pass away only hours later in the hospital. With victims 7, 6, and 1 freed, there were just 2 live victims to get out.
He did really well. He, as I said, was awake and alert and had to watch a lot of unpleasant things going on around him. He was literally face to face with the amputation on the fatality. He couldn't see the amputation on the live woman, but he was aware that it was going on. But he was understanding, and he was an intelligent man who realized that we had to do what we had to do to get the other people out and ultimately get him out. He was concerned that we were going to have to do an amputation on him, but was very happy when that didn't come off.
Finally, we said, well, look, we're going to have to, go with this. And we called the doctor over, and she gave him some more morphine, so we figured, look, we got a time frame to work in right here. He's going to give him some morphine, and we're going to open this up. And it's going to hurt him. We told him, look, this is going to hurt you. But eventually we got it, and we got his other leg out.
The operation took just over 5 hours to complete. There was a lot of teamwork going on at every level of the operation. Even the medical community is impressed with the way the fire service conducts business.
I really think the fire department's chain of command, the simple expectation that everybody has somebody to report to, and that there is a very ordered approach for that. That even in a system, in a situation like this, where communications broke down, people performed their role in their incident system that they understand, and that worked very well.
Philadelphia officials have advice for any area that wants to develop a better working relationship between the fire service and the medical community.
If you as a physician are interested in working with fire people, identify that and stay at it. Be persistent, learn what the fire community is all about. For the fire community, realize that you're going to have to spend some time and energy educating a physician or physicians to your viewpoint. But I would urge you to invest that energy, pick the physician who seems to be interested, who seems to be there for you, and even if they make a mistake or three along the way, work with them because they're interested, they want to get it right.
And as usual, firefighters and EMS personnel alike offer these words as reminders when handling such incidents.
I think it's very important that the firefighter paramedics are made aware of their position as the liaison between the firefighting service and any medical personnel who respond. Our job is extremely important. I mean, we are trained not only in the use of the tools and how they work and what they can and cannot be used for, but also in the stabilization and condition of our patients. I mean, it is paramount that we recognize the patient can't wait for what we know to be normal extrication methods.
I think two very specific points. One, no substitute for training, no substitute for plans. They do help you in instances like this, and I recommend to anybody follow them. That's what they're there for. That's your blueprint to success, are those plans. And you typically play the way you practice. And this was game time, and all the people, whether they be from the suppression side, the EMS side, the paramedics, the staff people, communications, they all really did an excellent job and rose to the occasion.
Fire officials in Philadelphia say it can't be stressed enough that when it comes to handling this type of an incident, planning, practice, and a strong incident command system are vital.
Don, here are some unsettling figures. About 70,000 different chemical compounds are produced every year. That amounts to about 250 million tons of chemicals.
The point, you never know what deadly mixture you're rolling up on when you respond to a fire, a leak, or a spill. Hazmat training and safety are a part of modern-day firefighting.
We've learned a lot about the importance of wearing proper gear and breathing apparatus, but that wasn't always the case.
All of which leads us to our next segment from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. In 1969, firefighters there fought a big chemical blaze. In recent years, many of them have either died of cancer or contracted cancer.
Now, it's pretty hard to determine cause and effect, but at the same time, many firefighters there believe they are sitting on top of an exposure time bomb. It's hard to spot any trouble here in this sunny coastal playground. Say the natives, Fort Lauderdale is a great place to live. Say the firefighters, it's also a great place to work. But they're carrying more than gear with them to their station houses these days. There are some doubts, fears, and questions in their minds, and some of it revolves around a fire fought in this city in 1969. It was the big one, a spectacular blaze at the Everglades fertilizer plant. Those who fought it, many of whom were young firefighters at the time, will not forget it.
But I remember as we rolled from Federal Highway onto Broward, which is about 20 blocks away, and where the actual structure was, something let loose at that time, whether it was an explosion or it just vented itself or whatever. I just remember this tremendous fireball.
It was awesome. It was awesome. The post office across the street, which had to be, a good 100 yards away, had to be evacuated from the heat. Explosions were popping all the time with different chemicals that were going off, but the main thing was the heat.
There was a lot of chemicals, you know, you could just hear the explosions and that.
And then they had us set up the ladder pipe. The snorkel was set up, and we set up the ladder pipe and put it up, and we were fighting the fire. And I went up to relieve Paul Yeoman after he was up there about a half hour, and we were using the old canister mask then. And when I went up, we had the water gun all set up, and I hooked myself in, and I was standing there, and you couldn't see because of the smoke, and you were eating it, the smoke, and you could hear those explosions. And there was a little movement, and I looked up like this, and I looked through the smoke, and I could see that my ladder pipe, the one hook, was sitting on top of the rung. And I said, oh Lord, what am I going to do now? And that was the last thing I remembered, because it blew by me. It just exploded off of it because of the pressure that was on it, and hit me in the chest and spun me out off of the ladder.
You were hanging there.
I was hanging there.
The old logbook shows that 100 firefighters spent about 3 days here, including overhaul and cleanup.
There were explosions going on. You couldn't get away from the smoke. It was swirling in the streets and around the buildings, and it was impossible to really stay out of the smoke.
Well, this fertilizer plant was rather large. It took up about a third of a square city block. And they had pits of nitrates and phosphates, insecticides, crystallized insecticides and everything. And these would rekindle and reignite on their own. And our job was to go back and put these spot fires out.
Following that spectacular blaze, life went on here as usual. But then, many years later, something strange was noticed. Many firefighters who fought that chemical blaze were dying of cancer.
We have approximately 19 to 21. The list grows daily. We hear from more firefighters that are retired, especially since this was publicized in the 2 local newspapers. It reached retirees locally and out of state, and it looks like we have approximately 21 or more.
That are currently sick or?
Currently sick or have passed away due to cancer.
2 years ago I had a heart attack, and last November they discovered I have cancer and tuberculosis.
Well, I was diagnosed with lung cancer in 1982, and I've been fortunate enough to get good medical attention, both in Houston, Texas, and here in Fort Lauderdale. And I've had a couple of surgeries, 8 months of chemo, I've had radiation therapy, and at the present time I'm going through another chemo sequence, so hanging in there.
It's worrisome. I mean, we've seen some guys that I knew for years and fought fires with for years and respected. I mean, good fire officers, and they're dying of these different cancers. Some of them smoked, a lot of them didn't.
The dark clouds of 1969 are casting a larger cloud across Fort Lauderdale today. A direct link? Well, that's debatable. But there are some facts to consider. Many of the chemicals present at that fire were extremely dangerous.
But you have one chemical here that had, I guess, approximately 25 chemicals, many of them known to be carcinogens. You know, they're on the most dangerous chemical list, by the country, the Superfund bill. These have been identified as cancer-causing chemicals.
And let's face it, firefighting was different back then.
Air masks especially, because at that time it was sort of a macho thing to go into a fire, and if you needed a mask, you were kind of yelled at by your compatriots. They'd say, look at that jerk, he has to wear a mask, he can breathe in here. Right. But we didn't know. We didn't know what they know today.
It was a macho type back then. It was when we went into a building and you wore your mask, as soon as you knocked the fire down, the thing was to take your mask off. And we used to make fun of rookies who would be, mopping up after that they had their mask on. And then when we started laughing at them, then they would take theirs off. It was more the image, that you were a smoke eater. This is what you were supposed to do.
Firefighting back then was strictly tough, no brains and muscle. I think we had the best equipment that the city could buy at the time, but it was insufficient.
Herbie, this was the mask that was used back for the Everglades fertilizer fire in 1969. Can you explain a little bit about it, please?
Well, the old type mask that we had didn't have any kind of an inner seal on it. So when you put the mask on, it just went to the contour of your face. It didn't have, like the new ones we've got, a tight fit.
Has the double seal on it on the inside.
Right, this one didn't. Once in a while, these air pocket would just pop out, and you'd be in there. And there's no real guarantee that of the safety or anything like that. If you were working something and something came by, as you can see, it would just pop right out. The canister itself has tape on the bottom. When you'd come to work, you'd pull that tape off when you'd go to a fire. Then you'd start pulling through here. If this thing heated up from the gases and the heat of the fire, a lot of times it would be a real labor to breathe through it. So as a result, a lot of the guys would just take it off, let it hang.
It's difficult to track various forms of cancer back to one single incident, but those involved here say they may be paying the price for a career of firefighting.
I would definitely say that it could be linked to the many fires that we fought in those days. There again with materials, with equipment that was faulty, that didn't work well. This fire, granted, there weren't many masks used, but there were a lot of fires where masks weren't used. There were a tremendous amount of fires where you get inside, the mask would give out on you, you just pull the mask off and keep going.
All the firefighters that have died of cancer and cancer-related causes, heart, whatever, were either at or in that fire. I can't say the fire was what caused it exactly, but in the age group, say 48 to 55, 57, all these people have died of cancer, more so than the national average or the average for Broward County, I believe. I think the general consensus of opinion was that it was a contributing factor, but the 28 years or 30 years of eating the smoke also has a bearing on it. In other words, we can't blame it on that one fire per se, but accumulation over the years of the lack of protection for our bodies would cause something like that.
Here's what Local 1545 wants.
I'm with the Professional Firefighters of Florida Health and Safety Committee, and we're working on that angle towards a presumptive cancer bill with the state president and the officers.
Explain what that is.
Presumptive cancer, the city would be liable for cancer-incurred illnesses during your employment, and the benefits would result in better workers' comp and disability benefits. If firefighters are willing to put their life on the line, the cities should be responsible for the firefighters that are willing to take that risk.
And here's what fire administration in Fort Lauderdale considers to be its obligation.
It's incumbent upon administrators of fire departments to see that we provide good protective equipment for our firefighters, turnout gear, good self-contained breathing apparatus, and part and parcel of that are good standard operating procedures to see that they use it. Once we provide the equipment that they need, once we eliminate the outside factors such as smoking, and the city of Fort Lauderdale has taken a responsible position in that regard by prohibiting firefighters to smoke, we're going to have a smoke-free fire department. Once we eliminate the outside factors, provide good equipment, good standard operating procedures, I think we will have taken care of most of the problem for our firefighters. Unfortunately, that was not the case in this fire.
Obligations, responsibilities, strong ties. None of this is easy.
Well, it's tough to work with a guy for 25 years and to see him go from a big firefighter, muscular, not afraid of anything, to having this cancer just eating them away. A lot of them don't understand it. It's something that they've never been afraid of anything. And they've always helped wherever they could, and now the shoe's on the other foot, and they're needing a lot of help.
Is there a definite link? Well, no one can prove it. But firefighters here say there is a definite lesson in all this, and it has everything to do with protecting yourself against the unknown.
A final word to anybody in the fire service: use your protective gear. If you have self-contained breathing apparatus, no matter how little smoke there is, use it if you have to be anywhere near or in that smoke. Use your acid suits. Use your hazardous material suits. Use protective foot gear. Don't take a chance. Your health is the only thing you have. If you have it, use it. Don't say, well, it's too heavy or this fire is too small. You don't know what's burning until it's too late.
Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Any different than departments across the country or the world? Well, not really. But people here are worth listening to.
We're told that because of the nature of our job, we live 10 years less than everybody else in other occupations. And at the time, we used what we considered to be the best apparatus that was available, breathing apparatus and protective gear. And they've improved dramatically since that time. They're far superior to what we had then. And the lesson would be to use it, always to use it. To use the gear and to use it properly for your own protection. And look for something a little bit better so you can last a little longer.
And the consequences of not doing that are what?
Well, it seems that the consequences of not doing that is death.
Now, perhaps we've gone a long way to simply say, use good sense and use protective gear. But if it helps just one person avoid a dangerous exposure time bomb, it was worth it.
We have some more worthwhile items coming your way. We'll see how Canadian firefighters fared fighting a big tire fire.
Dr. Dave Smith returns with more water safety tips.
Bill Kramer has news of people being promoted to company officers after obtaining college credits.
It's time for Second Alarm on American Heat. As we know, once they get started, tire fires can burn for months.
That looked like it would be the case near Nanticoke in Canada, but water, foam, and manpower got the job done. Here's our Canadian correspondent, Bruce Marshall.
This is the story of how firefighters' worst fears were realized in the city of Nanticoke, Ontario, in the early hours of February 12th. An arsonist's torch set a fire that would burn for 17 days, a fire many said would not be extinguished. When the first alarm was sounded just after 1 a.m., firefighters had a good idea of what to expect. The Tire King site had been the subject of a years-long court battle between the owner and environment officials to clean the site up. A ruling to separate tires into smaller lots and to dig ponds for firefighting was being appealed by the owner at the time of the fire. Units from nearby Hagersville, which provides contract fire protection to that area of Nanticoke, were first on the scene. They put in a hasty call for help from Nanticoke's Waterford and Jarvis stations.
I think they'll be coming ahead in a few minutes again, but I don't know how much water supply they have left down there. Roger, Gary. We're in a tough situation here.
Water supply was the first concern. The site housed an estimated 14 million tires and several buildings, including a house, as exposures. Water was supplied by tanker shuttle in the first hours, water being drafted from a pond north of the fire site. As the fire raged on and as dawn broke, firefighters realized the fire was essentially an environment problem. The firefight was a constant saw-off between air and ground contamination. The more water that was used to fight the fire, the more contaminated runoff water there was. The longer the fire raged, the more air contamination there was. The Ontario Ministry of the Environment provided constant monitoring of the groundwater and eventually took steps to contain and treat the water. The air was monitored by the MOE's sophisticated Mobile Trace Atmospheric Gas Analyzer units. Readings resulted in a number of families being turned out of their homes on evacuation orders. At one point, runoff water was recycled through the fire pumpers, but even with underflow dams being used and water being filtered, this created problems.
This plugged our equipment, the screens, and it just didn't work. So eventually they brought in a big irrigation pump with guns that shot it back onto the scene, and we brought our own water in to fight the fire.
In the middle of week 1, command officers decided to try forest firefighting water bombers.
They drop 1,200 gallons at a time. It takes them about 10 seconds to pick it up, and it takes them about 10 seconds to drop it. And they drop it within a 10-degree variance of the pile, or of their target. You could be standing 25 feet from it and not get wet, and somebody would get wet when they let it go if they were in the target of the water. It's really amazing how they can drop it.
fire officials had found that the fire was taking its toll on the all-volunteer firefighting force, too. The strain of working a regular job and then returning to the fire scene for a shift had worn thin with the firefighters, despite the fact that 32 stations within and outside the county or region of Haldeman, Norfolk had been involved in the mutual aid firefight.
We decided that we could put the fire out and that we wanted to put it out, but we needed help. So they then decided to call the Ministry of Natural Resources, which has the firefighting for bushfires in the north.
Before the bush firefighters could begin operations, much had to be done. Ministry of Natural Resources firefighters had to be transported to the site, outfitted with turnout gear, which none had worn before, trained in the use of breathing apparatus, and many shorn of beards so that breathing apparatus could be worn safely. Likewise with heavy equipment operators. Their machines would be brought in to pull the pile apart and deliver tires to the forest firefighters to extinguish. Water bombers would also be used in concert with the handline effort. Roads were also built into the site. While this was done, local firefighters prepared the battle plan. If the water bombers were to be used, several days with temperatures warm enough so that water didn't freeze on the wings of the airborne firefighters had to be forecast. A reliable water supply was found at an abandoned quarry north of the fire site. Local volunteers would be responsible for water supply for the firefighting effort, and foam would also be used. On Wednesday, February 21st, a full air and ground assault of the fire was begun. Foam was adducted into 10 1.5" or 38mm handlines to be used on the site. The effort was conducted during daylight hours from 0700 to 1900 hours each day. Local volunteers calculated that they provided 2,500 gallons a minute or 10,000 liters a minute for at least 2 days.
The machines would bring the burning tires out. The men would put water on it, cool it down, and then the bulldozer would move it back into another pile. And it was just persistence that did this.
On February 28th, 1 week after the assault began, and 17 days after the first alarm, the fire was declared extinguished. In Nanticoke, Ontario, Canada, this is Bruce Marshall for American Heat.
On last month's program, we brought you part 1 of ice and water safety rescue techniques.
Don, this month, Dr. Dave Smith, a retired Coast Guard commander, shows proper techniques using inflatable hose lines, boats, and even turnout gear.
This month, Dr. Smith has a Chesterfield, Missouri firefighter back in the pool with, first, his turnout gear on to show its buoyancy.
Dan, bounce up and down. Just bounce up and down 3-4 times. On the 4th bounce, just fold yourself over the edge and just hold on. As high as you can go. Okay, and just hang there. Now what he's done by bouncing up and down, actually the buoyancy of his clothes has helped pick him up over the edge. And he really hasn't done anything too vigorous. The water's now draining out of his turnout gear. Wiggle up a little bit more there, Dan. Let the water drain out of the gear. Move slowly. Come up a little bit more. When you can get your feet clear, swing around, spread yourself out, and roll away from the edge. Keep your weight distributed, spread out. Right, now that's how you get out of ice. But the main thing here is not to just come thrashing out of the water, but to let the water buoyancy pick you up by bouncing. Okay, now if you'll stand up, please, Dan. Pick your feet up and elevate your feet and let the water drain out of your boots. All right, Dan, come on, stand up. Now, Dan knows that the gear is going to float, and he's got some confidence. Actually, the more confident you are, the more you relax in the water, the better you float. Next step is to try it from a standing position. Okay, Dan, stand right here with your back to the pool. Again, this is a shallow water. Big breath, cover your nose and mouth, sit down. Don't take your hands away until you pop up. Get your knees up to your chest. Put your arms on your chest, cross your arms on your chest, right. If you can, put your arms right up, your hands on your carotid. Put your hands right up here on your carotid. Now, by putting his hands on his throat that way, he's doing a number of good things. Number one, he's keeping his hands warmer, so if somebody throws him a line, he can get it. Number two, he's insulating his carotid, which is his primary heat loss area. Third, he's sealing air from from coming out of the top of his turnout gear. It's going to keep him a little more buoyant. Okay, paddle on your back over here if you would, please, Dan. Now notice, when he moves through the water, he doesn't kick. He simply uses some very gentle arm motions. Most people in trouble in the water are 10 feet or less from safety, and what it takes to get out is just simply paddling on your back.
But for victims farther out in ice water, Smith recommends purchasing dry suits and an inflatable boat.
Now the idea is that if you're doing ice rescue, they run out on the ice as far as they can with the inflatable. Since they're wearing dry suits, if they fall through, it doesn't make that much of a difference. And once the ice is broken, then they can get in the boat and paddle the rest of the way to the victim. Now, in most ice rescue scenarios, the victim is going to be affected by the cold to the point where they really aren't going to be much help. And it's almost picking up an entirely dead weight. Roger, the line's got to go underneath of him from the boat. Okay, fellas, bring them back in. And of course, in this type of rescue, while you do have the boat, you can start mouth to mouth. If there's a solid floor on the boat, you can also do chest compressions if required.
But if you can't afford dry suits or inflatable boats and the victim is active, you can use a hose line off your apparatus.
Yeah, now, what the fellows are doing here, they're capping off the end of the hose. There's a blank female cap on the far end, and then there's a female cap on this end that will receive a hose from an SCBA bottle. And they're going to use the fully charged SCBA bottle with a valve on it to inflate the hose up to about 160 pounds per square inch. They're also going to put a line on the far end of the hose, and this is what's going to allow them to steer the hose. The idea is you've got somebody down in the ice, in a hole in the ice. You can inflate the hose. The hose becomes fairly rigid, and actually you can couple together as many as 3 sections of 50-foot hose and start shoving it out on the ice and then steer it with the rope. And the hose itself will easily support 10 people in the water, every 50-foot section. Now this also means that you have to have an active victim in the water, somebody that can hold on to the hose itself. Now we're going to assume that the victim has gone through a hole in the ice, and the ice is not going to accept anybody else's weight, and we don't have any other means of approach. We don't have a boat, we don't have the dry suits, the rescue suits, but we do have a pretty buoyant object that we're going to push out to the victim. Now there's 2 good things here. Number 1, this is going to support his weight, and number 2, it's going to give us a way of pulling him back in. Okay, grab the end of the line there. We're going to assume that the victim is active and he can in fact grab the end of the hose, and you can see that the hose is buoyant enough that it'll support him. All right, Roger, bring her back in. Slack off on your end out there, Al, and we'll actually pull him back in, pull the hose back in. Now, in this setup, we assumed that the victim was in the middle of a small pond and that the people on the end of the steering lines could aim the hose at the victim from different angles. Let's suppose we got a large pond now and the victim is a good distance out and we can't circle him. When there's enough inflation pressure in the hose, about 160 pounds, the hose will become rigid enough that one man on the beach can push it just about straight out, and the other 2 men just steer it from the side. Again, this is where you've got a large pond or a lake area and you can't surround the victim. If one length of hose won't do it, up to 3 lengths, a 50-foot lengths of hose can be connected, reach out approximately 140, 150 feet. It's really important, though, to have the steering lines on the end of it, because once it gets away from the beach, you've got to aim it to hit the hole and hit the victim. Wayne, just straddle the hose there. Just climb up on it and straddle it. Now we've already got one large firefighter on it, and here comes another one. It's an excellent rescue tool, and it really it's the cost of it is insignificant. All you need is somebody that's handy with tools. But again, the people operating the lines need to have life jackets on. Don't take any chances.
If you want information on Dr. Dave Smith's water safety training courses, look for his address in this month's heat sheet.
News that college is paying off for some people, and of course, this month's assignments from the University of Cincinnati. With all of that, here's Dr. Bill Kramer.
Thanks, Don. And let's talk about college. I've often said that firefighters do not need college, and that's true. But fire officers do, and the higher the rank, the greater the need. Throughout the United States and Canada, many fire officers have taken advantage of the American Heat videos and other distance learning options from the University of Cincinnati to earn their fire science degrees. And many have gone on to use these degrees for promotion to the rank of chief officer. I'll take a minute to salute some of those who have become chief on the strength of their higher education. First of all, Dan Edwards. Dan was a firefighter in Anderson, Indiana when he began our program, and he is now Anderson's fire chief. Rich Marinucci, now fire chief in Farmington Hills, Michigan. Jim Engel from Palm Beach County, Florida, who went on to become a battalion chief at a relatively young age in the South Trail District near Fort Myers. And Paul Trinka, now fire chief in Sturgis, Michigan. Recently, Chuck Herzog from Manitowoc, Wisconsin, was offered the job of deputy chief in Thornton, Colorado. And to a man, each of these will state that it was their bachelor's degree in fire science that was the key to promotion to fire chief. We wish all of you well in your pursuit of higher education in fire science. And now let's go with our questions this month. Question 1. The Bronx Social Club has been ordered closed by the Fire Department of New York. Explain the political, social, and business forces which can hinder enforcement of such orders. Question 2. Outline a plan for your community, however radical, that would have all public places of assembly in compliance with life safety codes or shut down within 30 days. Question 3. Explain the roles of the incident command divisions in the fire department's handling of the Philadelphia subway crash. Rank them in their order of importance. Question 4. Design an efficient mechanism for tracking the status, location, and treatment of mass casualties. Preferably, prepare a computer record for use in a field-based microprocessor. Question 5. Do firefighters of today, who enjoy state-of-the-art breathing apparatus, have any obligations to their predecessors who did not have this protection and who are now dying prematurely? Explain this answer. That concludes our questions this month. We look forward to your responses.
The latest edition of Pulse is out, and it contains some valuable information on hazardous materials for EMS providers.
Heart attack, 417 Talbert Court.
Our training focus this quarter involves helping the rescuer avoid becoming a victim of hazardous materials.
Probably the thing we emphasize the most is rescuer safety, because they are so much at risk of becoming contaminated or becoming part of the problem. So when we train emergency medical services personnel, what we start out with things that they need to do when they're responding.
Also, we'll take a close look at the Avianca plane crash.
For some rescuers, the name Avianca was a warning.
Most of us knew there was some place in South America that the plane came from. Later on, it was said it was Colombia. A lot of things run through your mind. You know, what was in that plane? Certainly, any aircraft that's carrying air freight is carrying the potential hazardous material that's going to do you in.
And 24 On puts you on the streets of New York City.
New York City, as diverse as its 7 million inhabitants. What this means to responders of the city's emergency medical needs is a diverse call profile. It is expected by the end of this year, the call volume in New York will top the 1 million mark. That's 1 million actual calls.
Remember, if you'd like to subscribe to Pulse or know someone who would benefit from its use, contact us at Pulse, 240 Sovereign Court, St. Louis, Missouri, 63011, or call 1-800-722-2443. In Missouri or outside the USA, it's area code 314-394-6565.
Remember, it's free. We're talking about your opportunity to get that two-part series on incidents involving pool chemicals.
Cal-hypo and isos present both a fire and fume hazard. Although they are not combustible materials, they are oxidizers, which mean they readily react with combustibles and increase the burning rate. Heating cal-hypo and isos causes rapid decomposition and the generation of oxygen and heat, enough heat to ignite wood and paper and cause a fire. The resulting white cloud contains chlorine, is toxic, and very difficult to see through.
This special offer comes courtesy of the Safety Committee of the Chlorinated Sanitizers industry.
Use copious amounts of water. Water will cool the product down, slow and stop the decomposition. Water will also dissolve the product to form a hyperchloride solution. It is this cooling and dissolving that make water the only effective way to extinguish a fire.
Now you can get your free copy of this two-part series along with a valuable booklet outlining the pool chemicals and industry's advice on handling them by simply returning the business card that accompanied this edition of American Heat. Also, tell other departments who may not be a regular subscriber to American Heat. They can obtain their free copy by simply writing American Heat, Use Your Biggest Bullets, 240 Sovereign Court, St. Louis, Missouri 63011, or by calling area code 314-394-6565.
That's this edition of American Heat. And a special thanks to those of you who stopped by our booth at the FDIC in Cincinnati. It was good to see you.
Plus, we'll be looking forward to seeing you at our next big show in New York. That would be the New York Fire Chiefs Convention. It runs from June 10th through the 14th, and we have booth 821.
Thanks for watching, and remember, next time we may be watching you on American Heat.